The purpose of this video is to give you a basic overview of tuning in Gran Turismo 7. When you mention tuning, most people think of power tuning, more horsepower or more torque, but that's really only one half of the story. In order to make use of that power, you need to tune your suspension. Whether you're drifting, track racing, or drag racing, suspension plays an important role in your vehicle's performance. But suspension isn't the only thing that affects handling. The differential also plays a role. This is why you want to tune your LSD. So what exactly is the LSD? LSD stands for limited slip differential, and it's basically a gear mechanism that limits the difference in speed between both wheels. In order to understand why this matters, let's compare it to an open differential. In an open differential, the torque received by both wheels will always be the same, regardless of the speed that they're turning. If one wheel is on a slick surface, the supplied torque will easily overcome the available traction and cause wheel spin. In the same situation, a limited slip differential will prevent excess power from being sent to one wheel. This keeps the wheels in a powered rotation and improves traction. Now, I've created a few charts to make the tuning process a little bit easier. They're divided into two categories: tuning and troubleshooting. I did this because once you tune your car, it's important to test it at a track. When it comes to tuning, there's really no such thing as the best setup. The best setup is the one that gives you the best performance. This is why testing is so important. You're tuning to get the most out of your car, but how that happens will depend on your driving style. Now, when making adjustments to the LSD, you're dictating the amount of torque resistance applied by the differential. More torque resistance causes more lock, so decreasing values results in more slip, while increasing values results in more lock. So if you want more slip, lower the initial torque, acceleration, and braking sensitivity. If you want more lock, increase the initial torque, acceleration, and braking sensitivity. Once you've got everything set, you can head to the track and start testing. The amount of slip or lock you chose will determine the understeer or oversteer characteristics of your car. With an open differential, the inside and outside wheels rotate freely of each other, making the car turn in easier. However, this can also cause the car to become unstable, and weight transfer from braking or accelerating can cause the car to oversteer. More lock will result in more understeer. This is because when cornering, the outside wheel needs to travel a farther distance than the inside wheel, which also means it needs to travel faster. In order for this to happen, the differential gears have to allow a difference in wheel speed. So naturally, the more lock, the more the LSD will keep both wheels turning at the same speed. This in turn tries to push the car straight and creates understeer. With a fully locked differential, the wheels will not be free to turn separately, and one or the other has to slide when cornering. This is why a locked differential is often recommended for drifting or drag racing. So to summarize, more slip results in more oversteer. More lock results in more understeer. So if your car doesn't want to turn in, reduce the amount of lock. As a general rule, front-wheel drive cars tend to have understeer because the front wheels are handling both steering and acceleration. Rear-wheel drive cars tend to have oversteer because it's easy to break traction with too much acceleration. Weight distribution also affects handling. Front-engine cars tend to have more understeer, including all-wheel drive cars. Now let's move on to suspension. I've listed these parameters in order of complexity. When tuning, you should adjust each parameter listed from top to bottom. But when troubleshooting, you'll want to work from bottom to top. This is because some adjustments are easier to make than others. Brake balance is at the bottom because this can easily be adjusted inside the car. Natural frequency will determine the best ride height and damper ratio for your car, so it's important that you set that first. Remember, when troubleshooting, only make one change at a time. Work your way up the list one by one until your issue is resolved. Now, contrary to the popular belief, stiffer is not always better. Stiffening the suspension will degrade the ride, and it's easy to make a car too stiff. If this happens, the suspension will not be compliant enough to absorb bumps and maintain traction. Softer suspension responds to road changes far quicker than a stiffer one, without losing contact with the road, thus increasing mechanical grip. So if a softer suspension is important for grip, why do race cars use stiff suspension? Well, when it comes to grip, you have mechanical grip and aerodynamic grip. Each of these has an effect on handling. Mechanical grip is a function of the car's mass, tires, and suspension. Aerodynamic grip is a function of wings, diffusers, and anything else that applies downforce on the car. The more downforce, the more aerodynamic grip is available. However, the extra downforce requires a stiffer suspension to prevent the car from bottoming out. This is why most race cars have stiffer suspension. It's not that race cars don't want softer setups, it's that the benefits of a stiffer suspension often outweigh the benefits of a softer one. To use an example, Formula 1 cars are capable of producing more downforce than the actual weight of the car. This means they're able to achieve more aerodynamic grip than mechanical grip. But in order to achieve this, they need a stiff suspension to support the weight of the downforce without the car bottoming out. They also need to maintain a specific ride height for peak performance. Stiffer suspension prevents the car from lowering or raising too much and can also help reduce body lean and body roll. Now, how do we apply this to the tuning sheet? Well, your main concern when tuning will be the amount of available grip. Obviously, less grip means there will be less traction, causing more tire slip. So if you want more grip, soften the suspension and increase the ride height to prevent bottoming out. To increase tire slip, stiffen the suspension and lower the ride height. Lower values result in softer suspension, while higher values result in stiffer suspension. Remember, everything has to be done in moderation. You can use what I like to call the Goldilocks procedure. If you remember the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, how did she describe the bed that was just right for her? Not too hard and not too soft. The same concept applies to suspension. Not too stiff and not too soft. You want everything just right. So now that you have your suspension set up, it's time to head to the track. Remember to work backwards and adjust only one parameter at a time. Let's say you're having too much understeer. More rear brake bias will counteract this. When it comes to anti-roll bars, you'll want them softer in the front and stiffer in the rear. Toe angle. Toe out can help the car turn in by inducing oversteer. Camber angle won't be adjusted when troubleshooting. Damper ratios. Softer in the front, stiffer in the rear. Ride height. Lower in the front, higher in the rear. Natural frequency. Softer in the front, stiffer in the rear. Any of these can help with too much understeer. Now let's say you're having too much oversteer. More front brake bias will counteract this. Sway bars, stiffer in the front, softer in the rear. Toe in can help keep the car in a straight line by inducing understeer. Damper ratios, stiffer in the front, softer in the rear. Ride height, higher in the front, lower in the rear. Natural frequency, stiffer in the front, softer in the rear. Any and all of these can help with too much oversteer. It's important to remember that too much of a good thing can be just as bad as too little. I hope this guide was able to give you a better understanding of why tuning the handling is just as important as tuning the engine. But that's it for today. Please like the video if you found this information useful. Thank you for watching.